Hi, it's Craig Thornton from Craig's To-Do List here at WWNYTV.com. I'm here with our Book Buzz segment, and I'm talking to highly esteemed author Leslie Connor, who is known for her award-winning young adult fiction. Some of her titles include All Rise for the Honorable P. Terry Cook, Anybody Here Seen Frenchie? The Truth is Told by Mason Buttle, A Home for Goddesses and Dogs, Waiting for Normal. Her list of awards include a National Book Award finalist, Alice Schneider Family Book Award, Publishers Weekly Best Books of 2018, Chicago Public Library Best of the Best Books, New York Public Library Best Books, Kirkus Best of Children's, Amazon Best Books. I would name more, but this is only a 15-minute segment. So I want to introduce Leslie Connor, and she's just driven here from Connecticut. She's doing a workshop at a local high school. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, you tackle a lot of challenging topics, or should I say topical challenging topics that people wouldn't even deal with, I think, in adult fiction. Incarcerated parents, bipolar parents, children with autism. And I just want to know, how do you hook yourself into a story? Do you ever find yourself sort of just not finding a topic, or when you can't find a topic, how do you work?
Well, I think every story seems to start for me with a situation, and my genre is realistic fiction. So I'm usually drawing on a news story or something I have witnessed with my own eyes, saw a story someone has told me. So I'm looking for some really grabby situation where it just hooks me. And the way I know that it's a good topic is if it keeps coming back into my mind. If it sticks to me, it might stick to someone else if I can do a good enough story around it. So it starts a situation, and then I just really begin to listen in my ear for a character to attach to that situation.
So one of the topics I mentioned is, I think, and forgive me if I'm wrong because I haven't read the whole book. Yeah. This particular book deals with a young person whose parents is incarcerated, right?
Yes.
I don't think I've ever seen that dealt in fiction before. It must have been really challenging and interesting to approach that. Where did this idea come from? Is this sort of from a real story you saw?
It is from a real story I saw. It was from a story about a woman who had been incarcerated for many years, and she had a daughter, and they were interviewing the daughter, and they said she was by that time 36 years old, but she had been about 11 months old when her mother became incarcerated, and they said to her, do you miss your mother? And she said, no, because this is the way I've always known my mother. But the grandparents, in that case, who had custody of her, made sure she visited her mother often so that her mother could, in effect, parent from behind bars, which is one of the great, losses when someone is incarcerated. That's something that they lose the opportunity to do.
And so what is the plot about? So I know that's the setup, and I was reading a little bit about it. So basically, is there like an inciting incident or something that happens that unravels the situation? How does it begin?
Yeah, well, it's an unusual situation in that, like I said, it's my genre is realistic fiction, but I know of no cases where an 11-year-old boy has been raised in a prison. But there are prisons that will take if an inmate comes in and is pregnant, they can give birth there, and then there are a handful of prisons in the United States where the child can stay on so that they develop that attachment. Only for certain cases, of course. Right. You have to be the right person, the right kind of person. And the idea is that, the bonding there decreases recidivism or coming back to jail. They have a lot of motivation. The mothers have motivation to be with that child. So the child at around 2 has to go with foster care or into, a family member of the family could help take care of that child until that mother is released. And then there's a program, of course, to kind of segue into becoming a good parent, and because a lot of them can, it's a heartbreaking situation. But in this case, I just had, kind of my imagination went wild on the thought about, well, what if there was an 11-year-old, not incarcerated, but comes home to his mom who is incarcerated, and he has his own quarters and everything, and it's a teeny tiny, fictional prison in Surprise, Nebraska, and I imagined a warden who would be creative and come up with a plan for this little boy. The rub is that there's a new DA in town, and when he discovers that there's an 11-year-old boy, he wants him yanked out. In fact, he brings him out to foster himself. So quite a lot of tension there.
Well, I noticed that just from what I've read briefly, you really have a great cinematic feel, I think, in how you set your stories up and how there's conflict right from the beginning. And do you think that is one of the reasons why you're popular with young readers, is because they get bored easily and you just want to hook them right away? And how is that skill? Is that something you learned, or was that just from your own experience of being a reader? When you read, do you feel like, okay, I need to get hooked?
Well, when I read, I'm making the picture in my mind. I'm a very visual person. I'm actually kind of a struggling reader, though, which is very interesting that I should land in this job. But I work hard at making things very clear for my readers out there, because that's what I was always looking for. So I want a scene that really unrolls for them, that they can picture in their minds. And I think that I kind of came to writing with a natural ability for that to some degree, but I got better at it. I had to work at it too. I mean, I have the same drawer full of rejections from the past that everyone does. Every novelist.
Yes, exactly. Every writer. You aren't a writer unless you've been rejected. And you're not creating if you're not getting rejected. So
that's right.
This book is the latest, the last one, right?
The most recent.
Right, the most recent one.
Correct.
And this one, I read a little bit about. Talk a little bit about the two main characters and the plot of this. I found this really interesting.
Yeah, so it's anybody here seen Frenchie is about a pretty unusual friendship between Aurora, and it's really Aurora's story, and an autistic boy, Frenchie, who she's known since about third grade. And Aurora had always had trouble making friends. She's a little in your face, so perhaps somewhere on the spectrum herself. But when she met Frenchie, who was not nonverbal but nonvocal, he does understand language, but he doesn't speak. She knew, I think she had the desire to, okay, I'm going to have to study this guy if I want to be his friend, or, and she did want a friend. And so that's kind of what happened. But as she grew older, so they met in about third grade, and around sixth grade, one morning at school, she has gotten to the point where the strategies she's been given to do better socially have worked for her. So she's starting to feel the tug of new friendships. And one morning, whereas she usually looks after Frenchie, she doesn't. She forgets that that she usually sees him to his classroom, and he goes missing, and that became the real engine for me. I kept asking myself, how do we lose people? Who knows something and doesn't know it's important? Who saw something and doesn't realize they did? Who saw something and won't tell or can't tell? And so those are all things that play into the book during the search. That whole little town is searching for him.
Well, it seems like and again, if I'm misquoting or misunderstanding anything, it seems like you have these really dynamic, charismatic protagonists that are kids. Young people, and it seems like one of your both these stories deal with somebody overcoming a big challenge. Yeah. Like then it's Aurora's challenge to find him. Now that she's dealing with the guilt of that, and then it's also his Perry T. Cook is his challenge to keep going to visit his mother, right?
Yes.
So and why is it so important for young people to understand resilience and determination? Do you think that is some kind of subtext of that, or do you feel like it just comes out of telling a good story?
I think kids love seeing that.
Yeah.
I think they're cheering for the underdog in their hearts. Some won't, but some won't feel that way. I mean, it can't be every book for every reader. But I think they love it. I think they want to see somebody rise. I think they imagine themselves rising from whatever thing is weighing on them, and there's always something. We don't have to go very far outside our own experiences to kind of have empathy, I think, and that's what I'm trying to build.
It seems like putting kids in those situations forces them to be empathetic, and I think we can all agree empathy is something that's really lacking these days in this country, in some areas, and And let's talk a little bit about young people reading, right? Because I think this is cool. When I was a kid, I was a little bookworm, and I grew up in a very rural area. I mean, we had no cable TV. We had two channels on television. I had to drive 20 miles to a movie theater. I didn't see a play, until I was 18. My exposure to stories was just books. And I read a lot, and people thought I was weird because I read all the time. So here I am. So talk a little bit about, this resurgence of young people reading, or is it as fatalistic as we think it is, and young people don't read? How do you feel about the importance of young people reading?
Well, I mean, as an author, and I know that, my other author friends would all say this, it's our job to, come up with something that does call to them and does make them want to read. And like I said before, we're not all going to reach every reader.
Right.
The magical thing, and I have 3 grown children, I remember the magical thing was when they each found their book, the breakthrough book. We have breakthrough books, we have breakout books perhaps,
right.
But the kids do too. They said, this is the one that made him read, So I had one with Captain Underpants, my daughter. It was Little House on the Prairie.
Right.
And with my oldest son, it was the Redwall series. So, that's what made them readers. This is so good, I want more.
Right.
And so that, I feel, is what our responsibility is. And so remembering our audience at some point. I mean, first we're writing for ourselves. We're writing really, just what is coming and what we're seeing, what we're feeling. And I think a lot of us write for the child we were. And, in the books, we're writing what we wish we could have read as kids, like you perhaps.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the choices, but I didn't have a ton of choices. I wish I had more choices. About books about people that I thought I was, or I was trying to be.
Yes.
But I think one of the things you said earlier was great, like the underdog. I think when you're at that age, you're dealing with so much feelings of insecurity and identity and conformity and belonging, that we all feel a little bit like an underdog. You hear these stories about high school jocks that were like, everyone thought they were cool and happy, and they were miserable because everyone thought they were stupid or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah.
And
maybe
it's like,
that, maybe,
it was in their head, you know what I mean? And
sure.
so I think that is really important. I think that's how you get yourself into a story like that. Have any of these been adapted for series or movies?
They're standalones as books.
Right.
I haven't done a series. I haven't even done a sequel in any case. I know that my agent has placed them, and there's so much media, availability
Right.
now. There's so many possibilities for it. So she has someone who just kind of hangs on to certain titles that she thinks might, at some point, she may be in a meeting and hear an opening with whoever,
Right.
Netflix, Hulu, Apple, everybody, there are so many making them. So there's always that possibility. I haven't had anything made into film yet.
Because they seem, just from what I've been exposed to it, and as somebody with experience with screenwriting, they seem to have a cinematic hook. And I think a lot of novelists, a lot of novels don't adapt well to that genre because they're very internal. But I think because you're dealing with young people and you want to show as opposed to tell, I think that's what makes them seem cinematic to me. And like you said, there's so much availability for platforms now.
That's
you know what I
right.
mean? Like before it used to be ABC, NBC, CBS, you're done. You know what I mean? Or a movie. And now all these platforms, probably want to get into a younger audience. I wouldn't be surprised. Just we have a little bit, 3 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about what you're working on now? I know you probably don't want to tell too much. Is it already finished? You said something about it coming out in 26 or 27?
26. Yeah, 2026. Around, I think it's summer 2026, maybe spring, something like that. The list that it fell on. So that is the sister story, which is new, something I hadn't done yet, but I always wanted to. And it's about a family that actually, it's sort of hung, the situation for that book is kind of that hung on the housing crisis, which is nationwide, as you know. And the family loses the house that they are renting and expect to buy. And they need to be out in some 42 days. And they're thinking, well, if we could just save, and they have almost enough to buy the house. And then this whole deal was yanked out from under them because they didn't get it in writing, which is something that the youngest sister, who's only 4, keeps repeating because it's the one thing she understands
Right.
about what happened. So the dad stays behind for work. It's set in New Haven, Connecticut in the beginning, but then the road trip that the mom and the three sisters take in their schoolie, which is a converted school bus, into a camper kind of thing. They take off and head to Maine, where they do have a relative, but then they keep going beyond that too. And so it's their experience. It's got a lot of things about that brush up against homelessness, about are you home? When are we homeless? When are we not? When are we not? Are we okay? And that kind of thing. And about community and making contributions and things like that. But it's also about three sisters who sometimes have some tension between them, being cramped up in this little caravan thing for quite a few weeks, and into the start of the school year, which really bothers the oldest one. So it's in the middle school kids' point of view, but mainly. But I did give chapters to the youngest and to the older sister, so that you sort of know these are the things that they're not talking about with each other, kind of. And that was kind of a fun thing for me to do. I like slipping into another point of view every once in a while.
Yeah, no, that sounds like, I tell my students when they're writing dialogue, how do you talk to your sister, and as opposed to how to talk to your mother, and people share different things.
Such a good point.
Yeah, and I like the fact that maybe I think what stands out about your work is that you put these protagonists in situations that could happen to anybody, and you sort of normalize them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like there's like I said, a lot of literature when I was that age was very glossy. It was very glossy, and I think there's an element to it that is realistic but hopeful, and I think that's sort of your key, right?
Yeah, I always leave with hope. I mean, even when there's a child who there's in The Truth Is Told by Mason Buttle, Mason's best friend he found him dead in an orchard about 18 months before the book opens up, and even that it sounds really abysmal, but I think that it's about Mason's resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's important for adults to know, let alone children. I mean, I find that a lot of young people today, if they hit an obstacle or if they fail, they think I'm done, like I'm not smart or I can't ever fix anything, and I think it's important to just in my experience, but
yeah, we
anyway.
are different kinds of smart,
right,
and capable. So.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you talking with me.
My
I
pleasure.
wish we had more time. We kind of do, but I'm going to let you get on your way because I know you're traveling. I will put your link to your website in the text of the article so people can go on there and check out your books. Our library here in Watertown, the North Country Library System, has several of them. And I told the librarian today when I picked these books up that I was meeting you, and she got all girlish. She got all schoolgirl girlish because you're really well known in that arena. And I have to say, it's not my thing reading YNR, but I was hooked within 5 minutes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So have a great stay in the North Country. And I just want to thank Leslie for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
And you can check out more arts and entertainment news on Craig's To-Do List at WWNYTV.com.